There is a specific terrifying morning when you look at the demanding life you spent years carefully constructing and realize you feel absolutely nothing at all. The fierce motivation that used to push you out of bed is completely missing. You force yourself through the daily routine, wearing an exhausting mask that is becoming mathematically impossible to uphold. The heavy void in your chest feels exactly like a permanent descent into a dark apathy. Your drive is not actually failing. What you are enduring in the quiet isolation of your bedroom is a merciless and highly calculated biological override. Your autonomic nervous system has detected a severe environmental mismatch against your newly elevated internal frequency. To guarantee your continued expansion, your brain is actively starving the highly reinforced neural networks that keep you tied to a dead version of yourself. The paralyzing physical fatigue you are battling is just the sheer metabolic price of this profound neurological recalibration. It requires an astronomical expenditure of cellular fuel to permanently collapse a probability field that no longer matches your vibration. If this intense physical disconnect perfectly describes your current experience type, I authorize the recalibration in the comments below. Translating this invisible internal shift into a deliberate external action forces your deep brain architecture to drop its primitive defenses. It signals your limbic system to stop fighting the decay of your obsolete identity and finally allow the new coherence to stabilize. You open your eyes, and before the cold morning light even fully registers across the microscopic receptors in your visual cortex, the profound, suffocating emptiness is already waiting for you, heavy, silent, and entirely immovable at the edge of the bed. You look out at the complex, demanding life you have meticulously, exhaustingly built over the past several years, carefully scanning the intricate web of societal obligations and personal expectations that securely anchor your daily existence. You look at the unread messages glowing on your screen from the people you interact with every single day. You think about the specific driving goals that consumed your every waking thought and dictated your every action just a few short weeks ago, and you feel absolutely, terrifyingly nothing. It is not sadness, and it is not a normal fatigue. It is a terrifying, hollow flatness expanding directly behind your sternum, a sudden, crushing exhaustion that drops over your physical body like a suffocating lead blanket, the exact millisecond you attempt to force yourself to care about the rigid structures that used to perfectly define your identity. You lie there in the quiet, creeping panic of the early morning, staring blankly at the ceiling, secretly agonizing over the terrifying possibility that you have permanently lost your ambition, wondering in silent, paralyzing horror if something foundational, crucial, and irreplaceable has cleanly snapped inside your core psychological drive. The mere thought of standing up, of participating in your established normal routine, of speaking the predictable words you always speak, of performing the exact personality they all expect you to perform, makes the dense marrow deep inside your bones feel impossibly, agonizingly heavy. You are not broken, and you are absolutely not failing. You are entirely blind to the sheer magnitude of what is actually occurring beneath the surface of your conscious awareness. You are currently witnessing the precise, clinical, and utterly ruthless execution of a protective biological mechanism. A hard neurological override triggered the exact moment your central nervous system recognized a catastrophic timeline mismatch between the environment you are currently in and the higher frequency you now internally hold. Your brain is not slowly failing you. It is actively, systematically, and aggressively pruning the obsolete, tangled synaptic connections that firmly anchored your former identity to a reality you have already outgrown. Massive, incalculable quantities of your highly limited metabolic energy are being forcefully redirected, pulled violently and efficiently away from your localized motivation centers, and channeled directly downward into profound foundational neural restructuring. This immense internal reconstruction requires all available power, leaving absolutely nothing for the surface. The default mode network, the intricate, highly demanding and energy-intensive neurological scaffolding that continuously projects your cohesive, recognizable sense of self into the physical world, is currently undergoing a mandatory system-wide reboot sequence. This intense structural defragmentation causes a total temporary suspension of your normal emotional baseline, leaving you floating blind in this terrifyingly sterile, frictionless void of perception. You are quite literally feeling the exact physiological weight of a quantum probability collapsing in real time inside the dark architecture of your own skull. The biological energy it takes to dissolve an entire timeline of who you used to be is absolutely staggering. And your physical body is currently paying that massive tax in the heavy currency of sheer unadulterated exhaustion. It is exactly like trying to force modern, hyper-complex, high-performance software to run perfectly on a decaying physical hardware system that is actively, aggressively being dismantled, gutted, and completely rewired while still plugged directly into the wall. Your internal biological battery is not draining rapidly because your system is failing, or because you are slipping into a deep, inescapable depressive collapse that you cannot control. Your battery is draining because every single volt of available power, every ounce of your physiological and neurochemical resources is being securely routed to install a massive, uninterruptible core energetic update. The system is intentionally leaving absolutely zero surplus energy for the exhausting peripheral background tasks of pretending to be the person you were yesterday. You catch yourself staring completely blankly at the glowing, sterile screen of your phone, or watching the slow dust float aimlessly in the window light for hours on end, entirely unable to initiate simple, basic tasks that should logically take your brain no more than 5 minutes to complete. You are not actively sad, you are not openly grieving a tangible physical loss, yet you feel an overwhelming, almost magnetic biological urge to pull back completely, to withdraw entirely from everyone who knows your name, your history, or expects your energy. You just want to simply lay in the heavy, unbroken silence and let the entire chaotic world spin violently on its axis, without demanding your active participation or your emotional labor. When the people closest to your orbit inevitably ask what is wrong, you find that you cannot articulate the sensation to them because you entirely lack the linguistic vocabulary to properly describe this highly specific, paralyzing, and suffocating emptiness. This profound inability to explain your own absence to the people you love breeds a quiet, creeping, and terrifying panic in your chest. You become deeply, secretly convinced that you are rapidly regressing into a dark, inescapable apathy, terrified that you are systematically destroying all the hard-won progress and the powerful forward momentum you fought so desperately hard to achieve over the last few years. You are actively suffering from a severe state of cognitive dissonance, an agonizing, high-friction state arising directly from the violent, invisible collision between your conscious, deeply ingrained societal expectations and your rapidly shifting, highly volatile subconscious quantum state. As your underlying conscious awareness forcefully expands into a vastly higher state of coherence, clarity, and stillness, the dense, heavy, lower-frequency neural loops that previously dictated your daily automated actions are experiencing massive, cascading, destructive interference. They are effectively, mathematically, and permanently cancelling each other out, leaving a terrifying blank space where your relentless anxiety used to forcefully drive you forward. Your entire biological system is ruthlessly enforcing a mandatory, non-negotiable state of profound neurological inhibition. It is physically paralyzing your localized action centers, actively cutting the energetic connection between your intent and your physical movement, specifically to prevent you from taking any further steps based on outdated, rapidly decaying energetic templates. The intelligent system knows that if you were to force action right now, if you were to push violently through the dense exhaustion using sheer brute force willpower, you would only create catastrophic, deeply painful resistance within the new, fragile reality. Your nervous system is desperately trying to solidify. Your sudden inability to move is not a weakness, it is not a flaw. It is an advanced security protocol preventing you from running straight back into a burning building just because you happen to recognize the pattern on the wallpaper. Imagine attempting to play a deeply scratched, incredibly fragile vinyl record on a sleek, next-generation digital streaming device. The dense, unbroken, heavy silence you hear, echoing endlessly in the empty room, is not because the music itself is fundamentally broken or because the original data is permanently lost. The deafening silence exists strictly because the actual, fundamental mechanism you are now using to decode external reality has fundamentally upgraded its entire operational capacity. This rapid, uncompromising evolution has rendered the old, familiar, comfort-driven formats completely unreadable, fundamentally incompatible, and entirely obsolete within the pristine, highly advanced architecture of your current, newly installed operating system. Then, without a single warning sign or logical trigger, a sudden, violent wave of intense nostalgia crashes heavily into your chest, bringing a desperate, frantic, almost animalistic craving to return immediately to a time when things simply felt easier, louder, and predictable, even if your logical, rational mind knows perfectly well that specific past was deeply toxic, profoundly chaotic, or relentlessly painful. You try to physically force yourself to feel the old, familiar, intoxicating sparks of frantic excitement, or the sharp, burning, highly motivating edge of your old righteous anger. You find yourself artificially attempting to jumpstart your dead emotional engine with the potent, addictive memories of your previous chaos, digging frantically into the dusty, sealed archives of your own trauma, just to feel a recognizable pulse in your veins. But you find the desperate attempts incredibly hollow, the deeply ingrained memories utterly stripped of their familiar emotional charge, leaving you feeling vastly more exhausted, empty, and physically hollowed out than before you even tried to remember. You are actively mourning a distinct historical version of yourself that you deliberately, intentionally, and painstakingly worked for years to outgrow and systematically destroy. You sit silently in the dark, deeply confused and entirely overwhelmed by the immense crushing grief violently welling up in your throat over the perceived, tragic loss of a heavy, suffocating pain you no longer even want to carry with you. This specific, agonizing, deeply uncomfortable emotional resistance is not a regression into old destructive patterns, and it is absolutely not a sign of failure or weakness. It is the localized, violent, and highly predictable extinction burst of rapidly decaying neural networks aggressively fighting for their literal, biological survival. In the final, desperate moments before permanent, irreversible synaptic pruning removes them from your physical mainframe forever. As the underlying quantum probability of your past self collapses completely, entirely, and permanently into the featureless void, the primitive, survival-driven architecture of your deep brain registers the sudden, shocking absence of these deeply ingrained, highly familiar neurochemical dependency loops as a genuine, immediate, and highly lethal physical threat. Your biology does not possess the capacity to understand that you are healing, expanding, or that you are finally safe. It only understands, with terrifying, animalistic clarity, that the familiar, daily cocktail of stress hormones is abruptly missing from the bloodstream. The profound, agonizing grief you are currently drowning in is simply the raw, unfiltered sensory translation of severe system-wide cellular withdrawal. Your biological tissues, your very cells, are actively and violently detoxing from the heavy, addictive, daily saturation of dense cortisol spikes and adrenaline rushes that you falsely and tragically equated with your vital life force for so many grueling years. You are literally feeling the very real, very painful phantom pain of an obsolete, traumatized identity that has already been surgically, cleanly, and permanently amputated from your expanding energetic field. It is exactly like standing on the quiet street, helplessly watching a massive, towering, deeply familiar building undergoing a highly controlled, deeply calculated, and incredibly violent explosive demolition. The blinding, sudden flashes of light, the deafening, bone-rattling explosions, and the terrifying, choking clouds of falling concrete debris look exactly like a catastrophic, unplanned, and fatal disaster from the limited, panicked outside perspective. But beneath the thick dust, they are highly precise, mathematically perfect, and entirely necessary sequential steps, specifically and carefully designed by a master architect to violently clear the cracked, unstable foundation so that a vastly superior, infinitely more stable, and magnificent architectural structure can be flawlessly built on the exact same plot of ground. You suddenly notice the deeply ingrained automatic reactions you have to specific highly predictable triggers that used to dictate your entire emotional state. It begins with a passing comment in a crowded room from someone whose shifting opinion used to effortlessly control your sense of self-worth. It manifests as a familiar sharp tone of voice from a partner or a parent that used to send an immediate paralyzing shockwave of cold panic straight down your spine. You feel the subtle microscopic shift in the air when a casual conversation turns suddenly cold and your body aggressively prepares for a devastating emotional combat. In the past, these minor fluctuations in your environment would have completely hijacked your entire nervous system, throwing you into hours of exhausted rumination and desperate, frantic attempts to restore harmony. But instead of being instantly consumed by the fierce, inescapable biological reaction, you are suddenly watching it happen from an astonishing, quiet distance. You feel a strange, intensely clinical sense of detachment from your own deep-seated defensiveness. You observe your own anxiety rising, the familiar heavy heat blooming violently in your chest, but it feels distinctly foreign and entirely disconnected from who you actually are. It feels exactly as if you are calmly studying the erratic vital signs of a completely different person through a thick, impenetrable pane of soundproof glass. You are hyper-aware of the exact precise fraction of a second when your body automatically attempts to brace for a phantom threat that does not exist in your present reality. Your shoulders tense up, your breath catches sharply in your throat, your heart accelerates into a rapid, frantic rhythm demanding immediate defensive action, yet your conscious mind remains perfectly still, untouched by the sudden surge of biological panic. You recognize these rapid spikes in adrenaline and cortisol as bizarre alien artifacts. They do not belong to the person you are becoming today. They are echoes of a discontinued, obsolete timeline that your physical body is still blindly trying to protect. They are the decaying ghosts of a highly vigilant nervous system that was built entirely for a relentless, exhausting war that ended years ago. You're achieving a profound state of localized quantum observation directly within your own neurobiology. You are actively surgically uncoupling the external stimulus from the deeply conditioned, hardwired physiological response. For decades, your brain operated exclusively on automated closed-loop survival algorithms designed to keep you safe from perceived emotional annihilation. It instantly flooded your bloodstream with heavy doses of stress hormones the exact second it detected even the faintest familiar pattern of interpersonal danger. Now the brain is ruthlessly exposing its own archaic architecture. It is dragging deeply submerged limbic system artifacts out of the dark, primitive regions of your mind and forcing them into the bright, unforgiving light of the prefrontal cortex for conscious, deliberate review. By simply maintaining the unmovable, highly concentrated position of the silent observer, you are fundamentally collapsing the wave function of these automated emotional responses. You are completely stripping them of their stored kinetic energy. You are transforming them from active, dangerous neurochemical imperatives that blindly dictate your every behavior into inert, harmless data points floating aimlessly on a mental screen. You are literally watching the heavy machinery of your own suffering break down in real time, the rusted gears grinding to a definitive, permanent halt. You are no longer the unconscious victim of your biology. You are the architect actively redesigning its fundamental response parameters. You are an archaeologist, uncovering a massive hidden room within the sprawling, complex architecture of your own mind. You step into the thick, undisturbed dust, completely surrounded by rusted armor, heavy iron shields, and terrifying obsolete weapons of war. You recognize immediately that these massive tools were once absolutely essential for surviving the brutal, relentless battles of your past. They saved your life when you had zero other defenses available to protect your fragile core from the chaos of your environment. But holding them now, dragging them through the clean, quiet light of a time of peace, only highlights how impossibly heavy they are. You realize how useless, cumbersome, and entirely out of place these ancient survival mechanisms have become in the expansive reality you occupy today. They are heavy relics of a dead civilization, and you no longer need to carry them. Your external reality begins to feel oddly synthetic, violently drained of its usual vibrant, heavy gravity. The physical world around you feels slightly out of phase, glitching slightly at the edges, as if you are walking through a highly detailed simulation where everything lacks its foundational density. Relationships, daily routines, and environments that used to feel incredibly solid, permanent, and unquestionable now seem astonishingly fragile. You look at the people you interact with daily, the physical spaces you inhabit, the repetitive conversations you participate in, and you suddenly perceive them as purely performative. They feel hollow, scripted, and entirely exhausting to maintain, requiring a heavy mask that you no longer have the energy to wear. It requires a massive, unsustainable expenditure of pure, concentrated willpower just to pretend you still belong in these rooms. You sit in group conversations, nodding along to topics that feel trivial, feeling the immense, crushing, energetic drain of simply maintaining the polite illusion of your active participation. You are waking up to a terrifying, liberating realization that changes everything about how you navigate the world moving forward. The heavy structures supporting your daily life were built entirely on the shaky, unstable foundation of your unhealed trauma. As that underlying trauma finally resolves, releasing its grip and hardening into objective wisdom, the external structures built specifically to accommodate it are spontaneously, violently crumbling to the ground. This sensation of intense, disorienting derealization is not a psychological failing or a symptom of clinical depression. It is the literal macro expression of internal quantum decoherence regarding your previous environmental attachments. You are experiencing the physical, unavoidable decay of the reality you constructed when you were operating in pure survival mode. The complex, tightly wound neural networks that meticulously projected your internal state of hypervigilance onto the external world are actively, aggressively dissolving. They are breaking the fundamental quantum entanglement between your subjective internal perception and your objective external environment. The metabolic energetic cost of sustaining these artificial external structures has simply become mathematically prohibitive for your physical body. Your new baseline frequency, the quiet humming, highly coherent rhythm of your stabilized nervous system, no longer resonates with the chaotic gravitational pull of those outdated systems. Your biology is flatly refusing to fund the immense energy required to uphold a reality that no longer serves your rapid expansion. The energetic bridge between who you were and where you are standing has been permanently burned, leaving you isolated but incredibly free. It is exactly like removing the heavy steel scaffolding from a towering monolithic building before the wet concrete has been given the necessary time to fully set. You step back expecting the massive structure to stand proudly on its own, only to realize with absolute horror that the scaffolding was the only thing holding the entire illusion together. The moment you stop actively bracing the walls with your own sheer exhaustion, the environment shatters. The moment you stop using your severe anxiety and overthinking to hold dysfunctional relationships together, they instantly dissolve into dust. The artificially constructed environment simply collapses under its own unsustainable weight. It leaves nothing but vast empty space where your heavy obligations, toxic loyalties, and endless compromises used to live. You enter a period of profound, terrifying neutrality. Nothing seems to matter anymore, but you must understand that this is not the peaceful, flowing neutrality of deep meditation or spiritual enlightenment. It is a heavy, blank, blinding neutral, completely devoid of peace. It is filled instead with a vibrating, static humming anticipation that continuously sets your teeth on edge. You are floating blindly in an expansive, featureless emptiness, disconnected from the very concept of time. You are completely unable to grasp the familiar, painful, predictable shore of your past. You are equally unable to see the distant, promised horizon of your newly constructed future. This agonizing suspension generates an intense, low-grade anxiety, a quiet, creeping dread, whispering constantly that you will be permanently stuck in this featureless purgatory forever. Your analytical mind, deeply addicted to the familiar rush of solving impossible problems, screams for an emergency. It desperately scans your life for a crisis to fix a broken person, to save a chaotic conflict to engage in. It begs to create some kind of destructive emotional friction just to feel something dense, familiar, and real again. The silence in your head is so absolute, so suffocatingly heavy, it becomes physically deafening. You catch yourself wanting to sabotage your own peace just to prove that the world is still dangerous, just to validate the heavy armor you are so used to wearing. You have entered a literal state of neurobiological superposition. You are existing entirely in the liminal, undefined space where the old, thick, heavily myelinated neural pathways of trauma survival have been severely weakened, but the new networks of peace have not yet solidified into dominant automatic traits. The creeping, relentless anxiety you feel is nothing more than the prefrontal cortex desperately searching for a recognizable pattern in a reality that currently possesses absolutely zero established reference points. Your entire nervous system is experiencing a total shocking absence of the cortisol-driven friction it used to rely on for basic orientation, motivation, and forward momentum. You are going through acute, severe biochemical withdrawal from your own stress hormones. Your brain is aggressively interpreting this sudden lack of familiar poison as a critical, life-threatening system failure. It believes that because you are not actively suffering, because you are not actively fighting against an invisible enemy, you must be dying. You are an astronaut who has just deliberately unclipped their heavy safety tether from a violently dying, exploding space station. You push off the jagged metal hull and find yourself drifting slowly into the silent zero-gravity expanse of infinite deep space. There is no up to orient yourself, there is no down to ground your feet. There is absolutely zero friction to push against, and no sound to validate your physical existence. While you are entirely mathematically and undeniably safe from the blazing destruction happening miles behind you, the absolute lack of atmospheric pressure terrifies your physical body. Your muscles, your bones, and your entire cellular structure spent their entire existence aggressively fighting against the crushing, suffocating gravity of your past. Now suspended in perfect, unbothered weightlessness, the complete absence of the struggle feels exactly like falling into an endless, dark abyss. The terrifying silence that has been haunting the very edges of your daily awareness begins to slowly and methodically transform into a vast and permanently stabilizing stillness. You suddenly notice that you are simply existing in the present moment, without immediately calculating your next strategic move or desperately defending your invisible psychological boundaries. You watch massive waves of external chaos erupt all around you, with a strange and entirely foreign sense of clinical fascination. A sudden, unprecedented crisis materializes at work, or a deeply dramatic, emotionally volatile text message illuminates your phone screen in the middle of the night, and you automatically brace yourself for the familiar visceral impact. You fully expect your heart rate to violently spike, your vision to narrow, and your breathing to become shallow and rapid as the adrenaline floods your bloodstream. Instead, you feel an impenetrable, cool indifference that almost shocks you in its absolute profound depth and unwavering solidity. You stare at the glowing screen, or the panicked faces of your colleagues, and you simply observe the data points of the situation without absorbing a single drop of the emotional radiation. There is a massive, unbridgeable separation now between what is happening in the chaotic, unregulated environment around you and what is happening within the quiet, heavily fortified architecture of your own mind. This profound shift is not a psychological trick or a temporary state of emotional dissociation that you will eventually snap out of when the stress gets too high. This is the definitive biological stabilization of your localized quantum observer effect, permanently hardwired into the neural pathways of your brain. Your conscious awareness has successfully anchored itself permanently outside the automated and frantic electrical fluctuations of the amygdala. Your central nervous system has officially established a dominant high-coherence baseline frequency that actively repels lower-frequency environmental interference through the physical and undeniable principle of phase locking. You have successfully, completely decoupled your internal autonomic regulation mechanisms from the entirely unpredictable external stimuli of the chaotic physical world. Your biology is no longer enslaved to the erratic and draining emotional weather patterns of the people who carelessly demand your time and attention. You are now biologically immune to the chaotic entrainment of the completely unregulated nervous systems of the individuals desperately spinning out of control in your immediate vicinity. You have fully transitioned from being a fragile, highly reactive small boat, tossed violently by the brutal, unforgiving surface waves of a Category 5 hurricane, to becoming the deep, undisturbed ocean floor miles beneath the catastrophic storm. The chaos is still raging and screaming violently on the surface far above your head, ripping other vessels apart in its relentless fury. But down in the lightless, heavily pressurized depths where your consciousness now permanently resides, the water remains perfectly still, untouched, completely silent and utterly immovable. As this profound internal stillness solidifies into a permanent neurological structure, people in your life suddenly begin to completely exit your personal orbit without a single word of explanation or dramatic confrontation. Relationships that previously required massive daily infusions of your vital metabolic energy to sustain simply dissolve into the ether like smoke in a strong wind, leaving no residual grief. Simultaneously, entirely new serendipitous opportunities begin to effortlessly manifest in your immediate physical reality with absolutely zero conscious striving or exhausting physical effort on your part. You start to deeply notice a bizarre and relentless synchronicity, where the exact financial resources, the perfect career conversations, or the precise supportive environments you desperately need appear precisely when they are biologically and logistically required. It rapidly begins to feel less like random, unpredictable luck, and far more like a cold, undeniable mathematical certainty executing itself flawlessly in the background of your daily life. You are actively and consciously experiencing the eerie and profound sensation of physical reality literally bending, contorting, and reorganizing itself to seamlessly accommodate your radically new state of being. This undeniable external evidence fundamentally proves to your deeply skeptical, analytical mind that your lifelong agonizing struggle was never actually required to move things forward. Your fully stabilized internal coherence is now autonomously generating a massive, powerful, reorganized electromagnetic field that fundamentally alters the probability distribution of your immediate physical environment. By permanently removing the immense neurological friction of constant psychological resistance and deep-seated cellular fear, you have successfully collapsed the wave functions of optimal evolutionary outcomes directly into your immediate path through the rigorous mechanics of macro-quantum entanglement. The external reality surrounding your physical body is not actually consciously rewarding you for your good behavior or your dedicated spiritual progress. It is simply and mechanically reorganizing itself at a subatomic and molecular level to geometrically match the dominant, highly coherent frequency pattern you are now consistently and effortlessly projecting from your newly upgraded central nervous system. It is exactly like dropping a massive, high-powered, heavy neodymium magnet onto a flat wooden table, completely covered in thousands of scattered, chaotic metallic iron filings. The magnet does not have to actively, aggressively reach out and desperately grab each individual scattered piece of metal to force it into a cohesive alignment. Its mere undeniable physical presence completely alters the gravitational and magnetic field of the table, forcing every single fragmented piece of iron to instantly, violently snap into perfect symmetrical alignment around its newly established and completely unshakable center of gravity. You soon face a highly complex external challenge that would have previously triggered a massive, devastating emotional meltdown, or days of exhaustive, agonizing, paralyzing overthinking. Instead, you quietly observe the parameters of the problem, and you systematically solve it in a matter of minutes with a cold, detached, and breathtakingly ruthless efficiency. You do not feel the familiar addictive rush of adrenaline that used to accompany your dramatic victories over adversity. Instead, you suddenly deeply mourn the tragic and heavily suppressed realization that you spent years and decades of your precious life falsely equating immense suffering with fundamental human worthiness. You see with absolutely terrifying clarity, for the very first time, that your greatest life achievements and your most profound moments of personal growth were severely delayed and heavily taxed by your absolute chemical addiction to the struggle itself. A quiet, profound, and ocean-deep wave of genuine forgiveness slowly washes over every single microscopic cell in your physical body as you voluntarily unclasp and drop the heavy, suffocating, rusted armor of the perpetual bleeding martyr. You finally realize with absolute crushing, undeniable certainty that you no longer ever need to bleed out on the cold floor just to prove to the blind world that you are actually alive and worthy of taking up space. The ancient core neurological loop permanently connecting your crucial dopamine reward system to the catastrophic, relentless production of highly toxic stress hormones, has been permanently and violently severed at the root. Your brain is no longer chemically reinforcing the exhausting trauma response as a mandatory prerequisite for basic achievement or forward momentum in your career or personal relationships. This profound comprehensive rewiring of your neural architecture allows the highly evolved prefrontal cortex to completely bypass the primitive reactive limbic system entirely during the complex, intricate process of advanced problem solving. You have effectively, meticulously rewritten the fundamental foundational algorithm of your self-worth at the absolute deepest biological and subatomic level. You have completely, fully upgraded your entire physical vessel from a primitive reactive biological system that desperately burns highly toxic, corrosive cortisol for temporary burst fuel to an advanced, highly efficient quantum machine that operates entirely on sustainable, infinite states of pure flow and absolute energetic coherence. You have been desperately trying to drive $1 million, high-performance sports car for your entire adult life with the heavy emergency brake permanently and aggressively fully engaged. You genuinely deeply believed that the horrific, deafening, grinding noise of metal, violently tearing on metal, and the sickening, choking, burning smell of completely destroyed friction pads were just natural, unavoidable parts of moving forward in this difficult world. You have finally reached down deep into the machinery of your own mind and completely released that massive, suffocating brake once and for all. The sudden, completely silent, and terrifyingly frictionless velocity that instantly follows completely terrifies your highly conditioned analytical mind. You are rapidly and painfully realizing just how much massive, unnecessary, catastrophic damage you consistently actively inflicted on your own beautifully designed internal engine just to desperately, agonizingly move a few pathetic inches forward. The profound, heavy silence you feel in your chest right now is not the terrifying, echoing emptiness of a dead void, but the pure, frictionless, limitless velocity of a complex biological system, completely liberated from the massive, crushing gravity of its own self-inflicted chronic resistance. Your biology is absolutely no longer fighting a desperate, bloody war that actually officially ended years and years ago. The frantic, screaming, blaring alarms of your heavily exhausted sympathetic nervous system have finally been permanently, cleanly disconnected from the main central power source. You can quietly, passively observe the exact specific triggers that used to reliably send you into a devastating, weeks-long spiral of complete systemic and emotional collapse, and simply watch them harmlessly bounce off the impenetrable, glowing electromagnetic field of your completely new baseline state. The entire foundational architecture of your conscious mind has been fully, completely renovated, and the old, deeply cracking, crumbling foundation of your generational trauma has been completely, meticulously excavated and cleanly, permanently removed from the premises. You are now standing calmly and completely still in the exact absolute center of a vastly expanded, freshly conquered neurological territory, breathing deeply and fully without the agonizing, suffocating restriction of invisible phantom threats heavily compressing your lungs. The entire fundamental paradigm of your existence has completely, fundamentally shifted directly beneath your feet, and the solid ground you confidently walk on is no longer heavily, secretly mined with the buried, dangerous explosives of your unresolved, highly volatile past. You have completely, effectively, and permanently stopped actively participating in the chaotic, dramatically draining theatrical performance of mere baseline survival. You have officially, formally resigned your leading, deeply exhausting role in the brutal tragedy you meticulously, unconsciously wrote for yourself back when you simply did not know any better. The heavy velvet curtain has violently, permanently fallen on the dark, suffocating theater of your own endless, looping suffering. Now the theater itself, the very walls and stage of your previous limited existence, is being rapidly, actively dismantled brick by brick, leaving only the completely open sky and the terrifying, beautiful, infinite expanse of a brand new reality that you finally totally control from the absolute, unwavering stillness of the core center. You have entirely, effortlessly become the untouchable, permanent eye of the storm. Your mind will immediately and violently attempt to sabotage this terrifying new peace. It will start to whisper in the quiet, empty spaces of your awareness that this sudden stillness is an elaborate trap, forcing your eyes to frantically scan the horizon for the next inevitable disaster, just to justify the heavy, familiar weight of your old anxieties. You will begin to feel the sudden, deeply magnetic pull of your obsolete habits, a subtle but incredibly demanding urge to pick a senseless fight, to doom scroll endlessly through a digital sea of meaningless noise, or to manufacture a minor, entirely fictional crisis out of thin air, just to feel that recognizable burning rush of adrenaline in your veins. You secretly want to restore the chaos, because chaos is the only environment your unregulated nervous system actually knows how to survive in. Your biology is literally begging for the familiar poison just to feel a sense of orientation in this vast, uncharted emptiness. You are realizing with a cold, uncomfortable clarity that your absolute biggest obstacle right now is not the external world, not your circumstances, and not the people around you, but your own desperate, deeply ingrained addictive desire to actively interfere with a biological healing process that is already perfectly complete. This insidious temptation to return to the burning building is simply your analytical mind attempting to reassert its lost dominance by projecting highly outdated threat models onto a completely stable and safe environment. In the rigorous realm of clinical neurology, we recognize this specific, frustrating phenomenon as a severe predictive coding failure. Your brain is aggressively trying to predict a survival threat that simply no longer exists in your current reality, throwing constant, blaring error messages into your conscious awareness because the profound, expansive silence feels fundamentally wrong and dangerously unpredictable to a physiological system entirely wired for a perpetual state of war. Your amygdala is firing blind, searching for an enemy in an empty room, desperate to create friction where there is only a smooth, unbroken surface of profound peace. To successfully solidify this new, elevated quantum probability, you must engage in a relentless practice of deliberate and absolute neurological inhibition. You must consciously and ruthlessly refuse to feed even a single drop of your precious attention, emotion, or metabolic energy into the rapidly decaying synaptic loops of your former panic. By maintaining a strict, unwavering, and almost militant protocol of non-interference, you allow the innate, miraculous neuroplasticity of your brain to finalize its massive structural pruning process, permanently sealing the newly formed pathways without any toxic, regressive contamination from your old mental habits. You are currently watching a deep, highly complex psychological wound finally knit its edges together and form a thick protective barrier. But your fingers are relentlessly twitching with the overwhelming, frantic, almost unbearable urge to pick at the fragile new skin. You must violently restrain your own hands. You must accept the terrifying, counterintuitive truth that the absolute best thing you can possibly do for your own ultimate evolution right now is to step completely back, to do absolutely nothing at all, and to let your brilliant ancient biology execute its silent, flawless work, completely unbothered by your conscious anxiety. Every time you refuse to engage with the phantom panic, you are literally starving the old neurological pathways of oxygen, ensuring they wither and collapse into inert data, completely stripped of their emotional charge. As the desperate urge to interfere finally begins to fade into the background, you will naturally begin to consciously construct entirely new routines, not from a place of frantic, exhausting, fear-driven ambition, but from a state of deep, luxurious, and sovereign intentionality. You will start treating your own vital energy as the absolute most valuable currency on the face of the earth, fiercely and unapologetically guarding it against anyone or anything that attempts to subtly siphon it away. You will find yourself becoming intensely, almost aggressively protective of your morning silence, ruthlessly cutting out draining interactions, cyclical conversations, and parasitic relationships with a simple, cold, emotionless, and completely guilt-free decline. You are finally, perhaps for the very first time in your entire life, prioritizing the stabilization of your own internal frequency, high above all external social obligations, family expectations, and performative societal demands. As you consistently do this, you will begin to feel a strange, new, incredibly dense core of absolute certainty forming directly in the exact center of your chest. It is an unshakable, quiet, radiating knowing that you are finally operating the heavy, complex machinery of your life entirely from the inside out, rather than reacting blindly to the world from the outside in. You are actively and purposefully myelinating your newly established neural pathways through deliberate, repetitive, and highly focused action, anchored purely in high coherence emotional states like profound gratitude and unshakable calm. This continuous process of conscious behavioral patterning serves to drastically and exponentially increase the synaptic efficiency of your newly forged identity. It is literally thickening the biological electrical wiring that supports calm, decisive, and powerful action, while simultaneously and intentionally starving your obsolete fear-based networks of vital blood flow and metabolic resources. You are essentially taking a temporary, fragile, highly localized quantum state and meticulously transmuting it into permanent, indestructible neurological hardware. You are ensuring with absolute biological certainty that this elevated frequency becomes your unbreakable, non-negotiable baseline default for the rest of your natural life. You have just poured the heavy, liquid foundation of a massive, towering new skyscraper, and now you must strictly and aggressively guard the perimeter with everything you have to ensure that absolutely nothing disturbs the fragile construction site while it cures in the dark. You are the master architect actively monitoring the wet concrete, standing perfectly still, knowing with absolute, flawless mathematical certainty that once this foundational base fully solidifies, it will be able to effortlessly and perpetually support the immense, crushing, magnificent weight of the phenomenal structural empire you are about to build directly upon it. When this incredibly delicate curing process finally finishes, you will be able to look back at the person you were just 6 short, agonizing months ago and feel absolutely zero emotional resonance, zero pity, and zero grief. You will view that past, struggling version of yourself entirely as a fictional character in a dusty, worn-out book you have already finished reading and placed permanently back on the highest, most unreachable shelf in your mind. The crushing, invisible, bone-deep lethargy that used to haunt your every single movement is completely and utterly gone, entirely replaced by a smooth, infinite, frictionless well of quiet power and a deep, humming electrical vitality that requires absolutely zero caffeine, zero external validation, and zero artificial pumped-up motivation to sustain its relentless forward momentum. You will confidently step out into this new, expansive, beautifully blank reality, not with a loud, desperate, triumphant shout or a dramatic, ego-driven declaration to the world, but with a silent, devastating, almost imperceptible nod of internal acknowledgement. You will know deep in the very marrow of your bones that the brutal, exhausting, lifelong war is finally over. The timeline is permanently locked into place, and you have finally, truly, and irreversibly arrived. Global, system-wide neural coherence has been fully and permanently achieved across your entire physiological landscape. This profound biological milestone indicates beyond a shadow of a doubt that your entire central nervous system is now operating synchronously, harmoniously, and effortlessly at a radically new, unified frequency bandwidth. The localized quantum collapse is utterly and undeniably complete, meaning all alternate probability timelines of your previous, suffering, traumatized self have been entirely pruned, severed, and deleted from your localized reality. There is no longer any energetic division in your cellular structure, no ghost of the past haunting the corridors of your mind, and no lingering attachment to the trauma that once defined your very existence. It leaves behind only the singular, highly optimized, hyper-focused trajectory of your current sovereign, masterful state. The intricate, painful integration of those anomalous internal artifacts is entirely finished, successfully and permanently rewriting your deeply held biological history and granting you full, unrestricted, immediate access to the massive, overflowing reservoirs of liberated metabolic energy that were previously trapped in the endless, grinding friction of your old, struggling, fragmented identity. The massive, system-wide biological software update is finally complete, The entire organism reboots instantly in the span of a single heartbeat, and the internal screen illuminates with a flawless, blinding, crystal-clear clarity that quite literally takes your breath away. All of the chaotic, static background noise, the emotional glitches, the phantom pains, and the exhaustive cognitive lagging have vanished entirely into the absolute void. You are left standing there with a perfectly silent, infinitely fast, radically upgraded operating system that is fundamentally ready to execute any command you give it, without a single millisecond of hesitation, fear, or doubt.